Hello students, welcome to another demonstration. Today we're going to be busting open into full color, and the subject we're going to use is going to be these wonderful mangoes. And the reason we chose them, or I chose them, is just because of the complexity of color in them. They basically have every color in the rainbow almost, and we're going to use a full complement of your painting supplies to achieve this. Now, the first thing we're going to do is lay out our colors, and we'll do the full complement of colors. And we'll begin, as we always do, with the white here in the corner, laying it out in those little worm-like shapes. The next will be either your cadmium yellow light or your permanent yellow, whichever tube you have, and you're laying them out in your little worm shapes. And your raw sienna will be next. So we're going to lay out two yellows. And there's an order to this that you have to pay attention to. We'll move into the cad red light or the naphthol red, depending which materials list you were given. All right. And then the alizarin crimson or the carmine, depending what you have. And you're laying these things out. Oop, that one didn't go very good, but it's all right. And then finally, your phthalo blue. But let me just talk about the rationale behind laying out your colors exactly like this. It's the idea that everything follows the color wheel, right? So you have your colors arranged in order from lightest to darkest, but also warmest to coolest. The division of your warms and cools is right here between these two reds, right? So, for example, if I was to mix up this red, it's a very warm red, right? You mix up your white, you get a very cool red. So these two colors are cool, these three are warm. Now, your primary colors are basically this yellow, this red, and this blue. This is how light is broken up into these colors. So now, as you mix your colors, what I like to do is get all the paints going. And as they mix into each other, you're going to see a thing that kind of looks like the color wheel. As colors go from warmest to coolest, and then as they loop back around, you get your greens on the other side, right? So you can see right here, just looking at what I'm laying out, is pretty much a mango in and of itself. Am I right? You can see all these colors in here in the shape of a mango, right? All right. Let me just take this down, reestablish my workspace. And by the way, with color, you could easily lose control quite often. So try to keep organized. If you lose control of your palette, just wipe it down and begin again. Now for our sketch of our mangoes, before we begin, I think we should just work on just a white paper, and you can choose any of the mangoes, or like I said, shoot your own. We're gonna work with this one just for the demonstration. And the beauty of fruit is really, you know, nobody's gonna be able to correct you on the shape of them. So there's really no need for exactness. I mean, if you have a shape like that, that's pretty much, we're talking mango, right? So as we move into the color and the application, and to really pick up that illumination of the light that's hitting these objects here, still got the classical lighting, the core of the shadow, the reflected light, all of these principles are in here, but a whole plethora of really complex colors down and down the bottom. And all you have to see is, like, when you're looking at real fruit, and look and appreciate just the variety of colors involved, everything from warms and cools to neutrals, muddy greens and yellows. So it's all in here, and it's all contained in this simple thing, but still, all of it is still lit with classical lighting. So like always, I suggest going in with the lights. So you're down at this end of the palette. And keep in mind, we're not using black, and white is a neutralizer. So if we were to start dropping in some of these nice rich yellows in here, and keep in mind, it's acrylic, so something you don't like, eventually you could just paint over it. See, watch as we move down in the palette into the color scheme. You start getting into some of these colors up and around here. Now we dip down into those cool reds to pick up some of that stuff over here, right? See how that gradual change? And we're gonna go down the color wheel to the other side, into some of those nice, rich, muddy greens maybe at the bottom. Down here, right? Under here, get your ochres going. Moving it up into those nice big red shapes in here. I think we can kick that up even more, right? So as you're developing and splashing all these colors around, you might think about making some adjustments to the background, whatever it needs to be. If you want to cool down the background, neutralize the background, get rid of the white, you can do that. What about if we did something like this? Just to give it sort of that background shape as we model our forms. Now, again, I'm looking at this as in terms of first and second passes. So this would be just a simple blocking in of the forms. What do you think? Not forgetting our cast shadows. They're very subtle down there. Now, the reason we don't use black is because when you're dealing with color, it's really about warm and cool, not necessarily light and dark. But if you do need to get into those deep dark colors, it'll be up in here. And this is where you can mix some very luscious, rich, deep darks, right? Look at that. And then if you need grays, that just goes down and gets neutralized down here into these wonderful grays. If you want to warm up your grays, a little bit more yellow. If you want to cool them down, go back into some more of those cool hues here. But it's all in there and you can manage to do that. All right, so we're back to our piece. As we're developing it, right? You can start to define some shapes if you want. Some of these edges. Now keep in mind, as colors roll away from you, remember that they soften along the edges and turn this way. But even in this transition between the warm side of this mango, there is, just like we were doing with the sphere, a whole range of values that soften and slowly get into middle tones as you get there, all right? I think I see a lot more greens down here. And, you know, here's the thing. If you notice, I spend a lot of time down here mixing the color. And if you want to, you can always just test it right there. Test it right on your paper, on your reference, or on your fruit itself. Mix up that color. See if you can't find that, and just spend a little time in here. Ooh, a little blue in there, right? There you go. So any color that you need to mix can be mixed with this palette. And like I say, once you start to refine things, you can slow down, model the forms, get them all exact. But try to enjoy the process of mixing color. And if you don't like what you have, you just have to give it a minute, scumble it up a little bit, and it's totally dry and ready for another application. If it's drying too fast, don't hesitate to get in here with a little bit of your mister to wet up a little bit. But the other thing too is when you're building colors, you're layering them as well. So if you need to get back in here into the lights, you can start to do that. Again, if you start to lose control of your palette, which is natural and normal, just take your palette down a little bit, clean it up. If you've lost some colors, like I lost the yellow and the white there, remain calm. This is part of the process. Throw away your thing and just go back to laying out more paint in the same order. It's important that you do things in the same order. If you get used to laying out your paints in the same way, it'll be like playing a piano. You don't have to search for the key. It'll always be there where you need it to be. And then you can get back in here. Start mixing up those rich colors again. What do you think about that? And building. Clarifying. Right? You get into some of these rich, creamy tones. All right, I just want to give you one last thought. I want you to slow down a little bit more. I think you can see how, yeah, you could really get into some of these really rich colors in here and these oranges down here at the bottom, right? Starting to see your guy take on a form of his own. I just want to give you a little bit more color theory. You can see where we can get a little bit richer in this core of the shadow in here. Starting to see your mango happen. Now here, I'm just going to jump ahead a little bit. But when you get into the warmest areas, say if you want to find that highlight in here, instead of putting more white paint, consider going cooler. Go down to this side of the spectrum. See that ice cold you just created? Very cool. And use that as your highlight. So in other words, your highlight is not more white, it's more color. You see how that balance is struck between warm and cool? Make it almost vibrate and become more bright than it would be if you just use white. Watch this. If you were just to use white, thinking that white makes things lighter, it's not nearly as consistent with reality as it would be if you went into, and it doesn't have to be cool blue, it can be these hot pinks, cool pinks, sorry, right? And stretch that all over, especially in your reflected light. If you can see on the other side of your mangoes and you start getting up into here, you can still pull off that core of the shadow, scumbling some colors right behind your mangoes. What do you think of that? Thoughts, concerns, email me. Tell me what you think. But we're going to take color for a test drive today and try to build up these forms. What do you say about that? I can't stop. I can't stop. He's continuing. I have to shut the camera off. All right.